What is going on, YouTube? ModzvilleUSA here, back with another video. Today we're going to be installing one of the IPS V2 displays into our Nintendo Game Boy Advance. These things look amazing, and they have 10 different brightness settings, which you can change by holding select and pushing L or R. Now we're going to be doing it the slightly, significantly more difficult way of installing it into an OEM shell. The most difficult part about this mod is modifying your shell. It's a bit tedious. It takes some time. You can mess it up. There's one piece. If you remove it, then we're going to be going over all of that. Now, let's go over the prereqs real quick. You're going to need a soldering iron. You're going to need both a Triwing and Phillips head screwdriver. You're going to need some flush cuts and an Exacto knife, preferably with a new blade. You want it to be sharp. You're going to need patience, and you're going to need a brain. I'd also recommend some soap and water. Hopefully you got some water. You're going to want some soap to clean all the buttons and clean out your shell once you have it all opened up. Some flux and rosin core solder would be recommended as well. Now let's get into the disassembly. All right, we got it here in 3 times speed. I start with the Phillips head screw that's located in the battery port there. And then we've got 6 Triwing screws. All right. Now we just need to get the ribbon cable from the original LCD unplugged. Use tweezers or a small screwdriver. And we got 2 more Phillips head screws. Sometimes there's 3 screws. There can be 2 on the right there, but it's usually 2. Now we're just going to take everything out of the shell, all the buttons, the old LCD. And we're going to clean the buttons while we're in here. Now, I got a little shot glass of 99 rubbing alcohol there. And I'm also going to take out the old lens. We're going to be replacing that with a glass lens. So here's my little shot glass with some 99 alcohol. I just let the buttons sit in there and soak while I'm working on hacking up the shell. Alright guys, so I made this little diagram just real fast in Photoshop just to go over the cutting of the shell before we actually get into the nitty-gritty of doing that, just to give you guys an idea of how I cut the shell. So here's this little overlay I got. Boom. So everything in red we need to take care of. So what I like to do is I shave off these little bumpers here with an Exacto knife. Really easy to do. Just cut straight down. It'll come off, be completely flush. This is a bit more tricky here. These pieces, this little lip here. You can use the Exacto knife. I tend to use mostly my flush cutters for as much as I can, and then I clean up with the flush cuts. So if you just go flat with the flush cuts, you can just snip, 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 snip all the way across, and then go over it with the Exacto knife just to smooth it out a little bit. Whatever works best for you. And this side, this is the trickiest portion of the shell cutting, this whole side here. Pretty much what I do is I remove this whole lip here, except for this piece. So we need this piece intact for the bumper here, for the L button. Yeah, for the L button, that spring rests against this. So if this was gone, that L button would not function. So I use my flush cuts, I snip, I break this off, clean it up, and then snip kind of along this line here. I snip and I snip here, and then pull this out, and I snip here, snip, and this needs to come out completely. So you're going to end up cutting a little bit into the start and select like divider here, and a little bit up there. You kind of got to remove a good bit of it for that screen to fit in flush. And the one thing that's not, that I don't have colored in here is once you're left with nothing but this piece, you're still going to need to take your Exacto knife and shave like a sliver of this out, because just by itself it won't fit. You need to kind of like, I try to cut this in half. You don't want to go too flimsy and narrow, because then it might break. Just do your best to cut it in half or a little bit less than half with your Exacto knife. But that's how the shell needs to be cut. This is what I do. It works very well. And yeah, let's carry on with cutting the shell. First thing you're going to notice here is that this shell is very dirty. I did not bother to clean it up. Maybe I should have for the sake of aesthetics while watching a video, but the thing is you're going to need to clean the hell out of this. I always wash it in my sink with soap and water after doing this, because there's going to be a lot of little shards of plastic, and you're going to want to get rid of all of that. So there's no point in cleaning it before you cut the shell. You can if you want, but kind of a waste of time. So this is just a game of patience, really. You just got to chip away at all these pieces. The flush cuts really help just get in there and take chunks out that need to be taken out, making little snips where the boundaries of where you want the cut to be. Some of the angles are weird, and it was exceptionally weird, not gonna lie, doing this on camera with my webcam floating in my face very close to the shell. But yeah, you're just gonna want to get those angles. You're just gonna want to snip away. And I started with the hard part first, and then this part's much easier, just getting that little ridge there. Just snip, and you want to get it as flush as possible. The flush cuts do a pretty good job of chipping away at that. And you might want to clean it up afterwards with an Exacto knife, but if you just keep at it with the flush cuts, at least for this ridge here, you can get it flush. So now I'm going back, just cleaning it up, everything I can. And this one is important. Just get these bumpers out of there with your Exacto knife. It's one clean cut, nice and easy. Yeah, I like getting those out. And here I'm just cleaning up my ridge a little bit with the Exacto knife. If you have a clear one too, it's you want to keep it like as clean as possible. You're going to be able to see some of the cuts through this shell for sure with clear shells. There's just no getting around it. So if you want to make a really nice looking build of something like that is going to drive you nuts, I'm all right with it. But you know, a lot of people are really OCD with their stuff, unlike me. Now, this is the part you need to be the most careful about. Just you need to cut this in half, or just shave off maybe a third of it. Just be super careful, because that piece needs to remain intact. It just needs to be shaved down a bit for the screen to fit in properly. And once again, this is the piece that holds the left bumper in. Without it, your left bumper will not work, so just be very careful. I went ahead and cleaned my shell off camera, and now we're test fitting the screen. So those spacers have a skinnier side and a wider side. For that smaller spacer on the left there, make sure it's the wider side. And test fit your screen before going any further. If it's nice and flush like this, continue on. Now would be a good time to identify whether you have a 40 or 32 pin motherboard. If it's a 41, you will not need to bend the included ribbon cable at all. It just goes in stock. If it's 32, you're going to need to bend the bottom portion down and the top portion towards you. Here's an example of the fold for a 32 pin motherboard. Now that you've got your ribbon cable sorted, we're just going to connect it to our LCD here. Just a little clip. Just make sure you line that up properly. And here I am giving a little example of the fold again. That's how you do it for 32 pin. Once you got it nice and clipped, we're going to fit the gasket. Now just make sure you line this up properly. The larger gap there is going to go on the left. So we're going to remove just the bottom side, get the gasket nice and fit in, and then peel up the backing there. And then apply your brackets to that gasket. Make sure you remove the protective film on the LCD and put it in. This part, you want to be very careful to not get any lint or little particles. It's amazing how many particles are floating around a house. And quickly after that, we're going to get our glass lens on, just so we're not working on it while the screen is exposed. We want to do this whole section very quickly before any crap could get on our screen. And do a double check here too, just to make sure there's nothing on the screen. I peel it back a little bit just to make sure there's nothing in between there. And now we're going to want to solder this up. Now the ground point goes unused. We're just going to tin up select R and L. And I would advise against using Flux if you can, because if you put any rubbing alcohol to clean that up on those pins there, it could seep through and destroy your screen. So just be very wary of that. Now select, we're going to solder that select wire to TP2. This setup works for me. It keeps it nice and taut, just having it folded over to the left there. Now this is on the front of the board. I find this to be a good amount of slack to work with. It's too taut and you can't really fit the board back in. I route my cables towards the bottom there. And give your select cable there a nice tug towards you before fitting in the board. Now I put my front shell on those flush cuts, just something to have it hovering kind of on like the screen area, just so when we put these button membranes back in, it's not on a flat surface, because if it's on a flat surface, it'll push the buttons out, and when we reassemble it, it's not going to function well. So just have it nice and level in the center there. Before putting the motherboard back in, it's very important to mention that I have that Captain tape there. You're going to need to use either that or electrical tape to insulate the ribbon cable of the IPS screen, just so it doesn't short out on the GBA motherboard. So get that taped up before reassembling. Alright, so we're fitting our motherboard back in. Make sure to pull that select cable towards you. I like to keep it down there by where the battery port is going to go. And our left, this is where it gets a little confusing because we're looking at the back of the board. So the left pad on the ribbon cable, the wire that's on L, goes to the right and vice versa. So right's going to the left and left is going to the right there. And we solder those to the left pin on both the L and R triggers for both sides. So we're gonna flux these up. You can flux these no problem and just tin them. The reason we avoided flux on the ribbon cable is just to not damage the LCD when we clean it with rubbing alcohol. So we flux it, we tin it, and we connect our cables. So this is what works for me. I like routing it through that cartridge connector there. The wire on the right, I move around that capacitor. And tweezers are very handy. Not 100% necessary for plugging that ribbon cable in, but I find it pretty necessary. I like those angled tweezers to fold that cable. Works very well. And just secure your wires nice and tight with some electrical tape. And just put your bumpers in, put everything back in, put your switches, don't forget anything. And once you're sure everything's in there properly, we're just gonna secure the back shell and test it out. It is the moment of truth. Ah. It lives. Now if we want to adjust, let's check out the brightness adjust here. Yes, holding select. And then going left and right. We'll change the brightness. These IPS displays look amazing, and the camera's not going to do it justice. I know my exposure's down quite a bit, just to get it dialed in here with the webcam. But yeah, these look fucking amazing. And hopefully you're following along, and you will see for yourself how great it really looks. Look at that, dudes. Look at that. Running and everything. Style it down. Yeah, there should be 10 different brightness controls there. And make sure to play around with your buttons just to make sure you got them all dialed in. Sometimes you gotta dick around with different games to make sure your buttons are working properly. Seems good to me though, so far. So yeah, leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a dislike if you disliked it. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye-bye. It's true, Mods tell you what to do. Mods will